Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks. You'll often have heard me say over the years that the first 30 seconds of the battle are the most important. And no, just because I start the video after the countdown has begun, this is your opportunity to be able to formulate a plan. And in today's video, you're going to see where I've made a complete misjudgment, and then we're going to follow it up with the very next game where we can hopefully try and make a better decision. So, when we're taking a look at the matchup like this, I was thinking with the FV215B, shall I go towards the south? Do I want to end up grinding against 705As and VZ55s? And you can see, yes, 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 no, no, no. And then I decided instead, when I saw my 60 TP platoon going down the south, that they were going to do a good job at being able to hold it. You know, Polish tier 10 heavy tank, 8 degrees of gun depression, great alpha damage, and a good old turret to boot, apart from, of course, the weak point on top. So instead, I decide to try and be the flexible pick in the FV215B, and I try to dominate what I think is the most important location on this map, which will be the dip in front. Whoever controls that dip usually ends up being able to control this game as well, because from that dip position, you control the south, you control the north, you control the east. I've talked about this on the channel recently. However, I obviously have disrespected or forgotten about the pain that artillery can create, and 2 direct hits there by the artillery force me to have to go forwards. And while we managed to get rid of 2 light tanks on the enemy team, which maybe will give our team a bit of an advantage, I also failed to recognize that there are some very dangerous snipers on the enemy team, all in a platoon together. They have a K91, an Object 907, and a CS53 on the enemy team, all in a platoon. And right now, I just am having to accept the bad call that I made. And to wrap it all off, there's a blooming gorilla sneaking up behind us who usually would be sitting in this location, and they've managed to make it forwards. Now you could argue, this was just one of those games where all of the vehicles went into the positions. But I would also argue that it was actually very typical as to what would happen inside World of Tanks. All of the vehicles kind of went to the positions where you would expect. And I would suggest it's actually ignorant of me for taking my vehicle into that position, and I deserve to end up with a big fat 0 or near enough 0, whereas if at least I'd gone towards the south, maybe I could have helped my platoon to be able to deal with the heavies who are now pushing through. Undeterred, I decided to go back to the drawing board and take the FV215B out again, but this time play with complete caution. Now, one of my favorite things about the multi-setup with regards to consumables is that I have one setup where I'm using a large repair kit, pudding, and I'm using a small med kit, and I use that when there's no artillery on the enemy team. But as soon as I see that there are 2 artillery on a big open map like Muravanka here, yes, I am going to be changing to using a premium med kit as well. And just for my own sanity, while I absolutely love the Cobra Commander when I'm playing and when I'm streaming, I also find him a bit brash when I'm trying to record YouTube videos, so I'm not going to compete with the Cobra Commander inside this one. Okay, so with the FV215B here, I'm looking at the enemies list. I see they have a Kranvang, I see they have a Super Conqueror, and considering that we have so few vehicles on our team pushing towards the woods again, I'm going to make a decision at this moment. Okay, maybe this isn't the best place to be going when most of my team is investing towards the west. And so I'm actually going to decide, instead of putting myself in an awkward situation like last time, I'm going to start to fall back. And I'm also going to tell the Object 705 on my team, mate, I'm falling back as well. I really don't want you to get caught out, and I don't want to let you down, because there's nothing worse than being a top tier tank in a tier 8 game and going to a flank, and then suddenly the other top tier tank that was going with you that you thought you were going to be brothers in arms actually turns tail and runs, or alternatively just changes their plan. And so definitely use the fallback command to let people know. Now you see that I'm actually really tryharding in this game after the previous 0, because I really want to become the hero in this one. And so now that I notice that the Kranvang is on the other flank, that's one of the most dangerous vehicles, I tell the Object 705 and everybody on my flank, we can play this front. We can play the south because the Kranvang's over there. And you can see that the Object 705A, I'm really lucky that I've got a player on my team who wants to communicate, and they press affirmative as well. So now that I know that the 705 will be probably playing with me a little bit here, that I can decide to try and, you know, maybe challenge my FV215B and take the fight to whatever vehicles are going to be on this front. Now, what you're seeing is why this vehicle has the worst win ratio of any tier 10 heavy, and one of the worst win ratios of any tier 10 tank. Because it's basically a super conqueror that is worse. And you only really play this tank if you're a bit of a hipster, maybe you want to do extra crew training, or alternatively, if you're wanting to try and get field mods or marks of excellence, which is what I was trying to do at the time. I was trying to get my field modifications on the FV, and it also turned into a kind of a mark of excellence grind by the end of it. And obviously, when you've had the previous game, when marks of excellence require you to get good average damage and average spotting or tracking, which is added onto the total, you don't really want to have those kind of zero games. Alright, so I put a shot into the 705, but I'm telling the Progetto to fall back now because I can't stop that Super Conqueror from working that ridgeline against me. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to fall back to get into a position where I can work with the 705A rather than getting isolated by the Super Conqueror, tagged by artillery, and having the 705 down below. Alright, so I actually managed to track that 705A. Unfortunately, the Super Conqueror kills the T-28 behind me, but it's almost kind of worthwhile now because we managed to get the heavy tank that was actually protecting the flank out. Now, there's a CS-52 Lise who manages to hit me from behind. Luckily, I bounced the Lerva. I decide to turn my turret towards the artillery, but because of the very weak hull armor this tank has, only 101 on the side. Well, it actually sounds really good, but it actually feels like it's way worse than that. I actually take quite a large damage from splash. But this is where I decide to close the trap. We fell back, and now we're going to push back in again. I'm going to decide right now to focus the vehicle that's shooting me. I probably could focus the shots onto the Super Conqueror as well, but I really wanted to pick apart the German tank. Luckily for me, the Progetto ammo-racks the Super Conqueror for 1,000, and we get to rip apart the Lerva with our third shell, only taking 2 shots from the Lerva in return. And this is where the FV215B definitely feels like a really good tank. When you're using a gun rammer and vents with a good crew and a premium consumable like I am, suddenly the 2,700 base DPM of this vehicle goes up towards the 3,500 mark. And that is where this tank can actually be very good. I'd like to clarify, it actually has the same rate of fire as a Super Conqueror, so it's not as if this vehicle is outrageous within that regard. What you're also going to see me do here is make good use of intuition. I'm going to switch to the HE shell, and look how quickly that reloads to allow me to do 445. Using the HE rounds in this tank is definitely a good thing to do early, but unfortunately you can see that my subsequent shell only does 218 damage to the Scorpion. But I'm going to fire an HE shell. I'm actually going to decide to change to an AP shell because I think that HE shell could become more useful later on. One of the most frustrating things about this vehicle is it doesn't carry much ammunition, only 35 rounds of 400 alpha damage, and considering how quick its rate of fire is, you can burn through that whole selection of ammunition within the first third or half of the game if you are continuously firing. Alright, so we're up to 3,000 damage now. Not too bad, but this game is still absolutely neck and neck. The enemies have an extra vehicle, and they've got 2,000 hit points more, now with the magazine that the Progetto is delivering to the side of whatever it's firing at. So in this situation, what I don't want to do is take this big lumbering vehicle and go through the south. The 705A maybe has the all-round armor to be able to protect itself in that situation, but I really didn't feel that I would be useful pushing with the 705A compared to if I was to try and help the Progetto cut through the middle of the map, or even to be able to get the artillery. So I'm a little bit nervous in this situation because you see what I'm aiming at, where the Kranvang was last spotted, and I thought to myself, if that Kranvang is up on that ridgeline, it's going to be an absolute nightmare. So you see me ping the map twice, and what I'm actually thinking about doing right now is trying to flank all the way around to actually approach this position from the north. But I actually get a little bit of a glimpse at the 257 here, and are we going to get him? Yes, we are. Brilliant. Picking up our 4th kill of the game. The accuracy on this tank is actually really nice at 0.33. The gun, basically the FV215B is a really good gun on a terrible hull, and it's not even got the flexible turret or the spaced armor that the Super Conqueror has. So don't pick this one up. The only tiny advantages it has with regards to, I believe, its gun handling, its aim time, and also its view range. It does actually have 410 meters view range on this tank, so you never have to use coated optics and you still have very decent view range with the vehicle. So that's definitely one of the advantages. Alright, so with a quick run of shots, suddenly we are back on hit points. I guess that's also probably because I was on the other flank and I was unable to see how many hit points the enemy team had. By pushing in through the center there, we put some pressure on the Centurion 7-1, and we allow our Progetto to pick up another kill. And oh dear, here comes a Kranvang. I'm going to reload a gold shell just because maybe it will help, and in this kind of situation, I got to watch out. Luckily for me, the Kranvang actually doesn't manage to penetrate me with the first shot, which means that even if he rolls good on me there, he's really not going to be taking me out with the extra 2. I'm going to fire into the Kranvang, going to ignore the Kunzerpanzer here, and I hear the artillery, put the extra shot in, and oh, there's just something so sweet where one of the least competitive tier 10 heavy tanks takes on, or the least competitive tier 10 heavy tank which I'm playing, takes on arguably the most competitive and meta heavy tank as well. One of the things that I was really worried about while the Kranvang was unloading on me was the fact that my fuel tank was damaged with his first penetrating shot. Whenever your fuel tank is damaged in this vehicle and you don't use a fire extinguisher, it is very likely, almost kind of like, I'd say, a 1 in 3 kind of chance that you are going to get set on fire. So make sure you are repairing your fuel tank at every opportunity, and if burning in this tank feels all the more painful for you, there's even a directive where you could give your crew firefighting, or alternatively, you could use something like a different modification on this tank. Real nice save of our high explosive round there from the Scorpion earlier. It actually pays off massively because we get to one-shot the Object 261 on the enemy team, securing our Top Gun medal for us. And you'll see just how good intuition is. I think that intuition is one of my favorite skills on any crew member now. Obviously, Sixth Sense and Brothers in Arms, they're still incredibly meta. But intuition is actually game-changing with the way that you can make your decisions. Change your shells to use the most effective shell for the tank. Or as you saw in the Best Moments video yesterday, change shells to the cheaper shell, which actually in that situation was better. I'm not sure if the eagle-eyed of you noticed, but the armor-piercing shell on the FV215B or the FV4005 can actually overmatch 60mm plates, and that's why it was able to go through the side of the Foch in that situation. So it's actually just flat out better and cheaper. Intuition, it's almost like a must-have, and so the loader has gone from probably one of the least important crews, unless they're also the radio operator, to actually a crew member that I would probably invest, a premium crew member that gets Brothers in Arms for free on. So it's right up there as being really important now. So I let the GW Tiger on my team know that I'm going to help you. And I have to admit, this was a pretty blessed call to figure out where the CS-52 lease was going to be as we put in one shot. And hopefully he's not going to be able to hide from the artillery. And there we go. We even get ourselves a cheeky Radley Walters medal at the end of the game. And just like that, ladies and gents, we went from 0 on Fjords in the very next game by paying more attention to the enemy's team comp and adjusting our position based on where their vehicles were spotted to change how aggressively we wanted to play, to destroying half of the enemy team and arguably being at least a little bit of a hero in this battle. So that's more like it. After the disaster on Fjords, this is the kind of result that we want to get in the FV215B. Firstly, a meaty 12,000 experience game, because I have some 5 times experience boosters at the moment. A Pascucci's medal for destroying the 2 enemy self-propelled guns, a Radley Walters medal for sneaking in the 8th kill, and a high caliber for the 5,500 damage that we dealt, in addition to the 1,600 damage upon detecting. And because we didn't need to fire too many of our gold rounds in this tank, a darn nice profit in this round as well. However, that was because we completed some kind of mission. Don't think this is a premium tank, just because it is a reward vehicle that you can use your Super Conqueror crew in. So what can we learn from this video? Well, firstly, that apparently I need to clean my desktop. When you're releasing YouTube videos every single day, yeah, there seems to be a lot more clutter building up there. But I digress. The real focus should be twofold, or even threefold. Number one, if you have a bad result, try to think about whether it was your fault that you decided to go into that position, whether you've made the bad call, and try to learn from it. Secondly, try and use those first 30 seconds to make the best decisions possible. Look at the enemy team's tanks, look at their strengths, look at their weaknesses. And with the FE215B, this is kind of a beta tank. It's a bad heavy. You don't have the sheer tank statistics to be able to rush in and play aggressively like a lot of other tanks can play. Don't get caught out. Play as a support vehicle, but also know when it's time to close the trap. And also, thirdly, that just because you have one bad game, there's no use in getting too stressed about it. Accept that it was your responsibility, adjust your actions, and then try and keep your mental as balanced as you can. And you can go from being 0 in one game, to arguably being the hero of the next one. And I think that's probably one of the only good things legitimately about getting older, is you start to become a little bit more relaxed and realize that each individual game is not so much of a big deal, and then trying to use that to avoid tilt and try to remain balanced and just play your best in each round, if any of you kind of care about that thing. Anyway, ladies and gents, boys and girls, that was it for today. Really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And let me know in the comments, what are your best tips for deciding about where you should go in the battle? How do you assess the enemy's team list? Do you use the bar at the top to see how many light tanks, medium tanks, heavy tanks they have? And do you adjust your tactics based on this? Or do you just have a tank type that always goes into a certain position? And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.